Ladies and gentlemen, as Friedrich Nietzsche said, the lie is a condition of life. And even though the affirmative party of this debate does not believe that lying should be abused to personal advantage, we believe that under certain circumstances, which are events that may trigger, spread potentially harmful behaviors of citizens, we should resort, even as a government, to lying to our citizens in order to achieve well-being and security of the society. What is lying, first of all? We believe that lying is deliberate spread of false information or changing the information already provided to society. And as I already said, our criteria we want to achieve in this debate is well-being and security of the society. First of all, let me begin with an analysis what we mean by the role of the state. Ladies and gentlemen, the basic role of the state is to provide and assure the well-being and security of its citizens. And if revealing truthful and honest information causes an instability and harms the security and well-being of the citizens, we believe that we should lie in order to preserve the criteria. Ladies and gentlemen, lying may be a justifiable means in this case. And the burden of proof of the negative party in this debate is to show us that lies can cause a bigger harm than the ultimate goal of the state is, which is the preserving of the general well-being and security. And now let me move to the substantial case of the side affirmative, which is two arguments. First of all, we believe that governments should lie to its citizens in order to prevent selfish behavior of individuals in the society that would harm it. Although in a crisis, an individual may act rationally, believing that he would protect himself from the harm, this behavior is selfish when we consider the society as a whole. Because the act of the individual can affect negatively the society, and the society could feel the impact of the selfish behavior of an individual. We can see this happening on many examples. First of all, for example, runs on the banks where large amounts of people go to banks in order to withdraw their deposits, believing that something bad is going to happen thanks to honest information given by the government. And withdrawing money from banks may lead to a bankruptcy of the bank, and therefore it would put money of many people at stake only because honest information is revealed by the government. And for that reason, we believe that by changing this information, we would prevent runs on the bank from happening, and therefore save money and stabilize the society. Moreover, we can see the rational but selfish tendencies when dealing with infectious diseases such as SARS. If the government does not reveal honest information about the infection of the disease, we can't actually save more lives than by dealing with honest information. Even though individuals act again rationally and try to save their lives, they may, as a result, cause more harm to the society, because they may be, for example, infected and spread the infection even more by trying to save their own life. And this, again, has a great impact on the whole society and harms the well-being and security of society as a whole. So this is for the first argument, that by lying to its citizens, the government prevents selfish behavior of its citizens. And therefore it should resort to lying from time to time. To the second argument, which deals with the fact that government should ally to its citizens in order to diminish the irrational behavior of the citizens that would disrupt the function of the society. Ladies and gentlemen, people tend to act emotionally and react overly to seemingly dangerous events. And especially when they're driven into a panic, which is rational thanks to the honest information given by the government. This panicking and this honest information have the great potential to harm the society as a whole. Again, we could see the example of infectious diseases when they may not be overly dangerous. The effect may be smaller than proclaimed by the government, as seen on the example of swine flu, which killed around 50,000 people in total, according to the World Health Organization, whereas the seasonal flu kills 63,000 people annually. And because of the panic caused by the swine flu, it harmed the economy and it caused panic, which is irrational, and therefore we believe that if government changes the information, we can prevent it, and therefore we believe that the government should lie to other citizens in order to prevent well-being and security of the society. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning, sir. I would like to ask, is the government going to lie to all its citizens?
Basically, yes. By spreading the information throughout, for example, media. And
okay, thank you. Now, who exactly is the government?
Well, the authorities are, to say, elected by the people in order to substitute them.
Is it the cabinet?
No, is it the politicians elected by the people?
So all the politicians who are elected?
Yes, and who has responsibility for what is going on in the state.
Thank you. Why do politicians do politics?
In order to be there for the people, to speak for the people.
And to do good for the people?
Well, basically, yes.
Thank you. So how does the government or the politicians decide on what issues are they going to lie and when?
Well, by their best conscience.
Are they going to seek an advice of an expert, for example?
They may.
But it is not required on your plan.
No.
So there will be no one to oversee when the government decides and on what issues it will, correct?
Well, the government has some control measures, and basically, yes, it would do what the government thinks that it would be the best for the people in order to preserve the security and well-being of the people.
And is the government always right in thinking what is the best for the people?
It is there to decide. It's the authorities.
Now, what happens if the information is leaked afterwards?
Well, we believe that what the government says is considered to be more reliable, and for the fact that the government was elected by the people, it suggests that people believe to the government and would take what the government says as granted.
Could you tell me how exactly the people panicked because of the swine flu?
Yes, for example, in Mexico, it caused an economic decline of more than 4%, and one city was closed because of the fear of the swine flu, even though it killed only 80 people.
Sure. Can you explain then why were so many vaccines, for example, in the Czech Republic against the swine flu left?
Left because
unused?
Yes, because of the ineffective buying by the government, maybe.
Perhaps. Now, can you tell me whether people are actually rational or not? Because you seem confused in your speech.
They are rational when they see clear reason behind what they're doing. And irrational behavior doesn't have a ground, a solid ground.
Thank you.
I Ladies and gentlemen, lying is not effective. That is the standpoint of Team Negative today. What we say is that there is always a better result than lying, and that lying often is not the thing that works the best, and doesn't achieve either prosperity or security or well-being. This Team Negative wins if we either prove that affirmative arguments have a questionable connection to well-being and security, or if we prove that lying will harm a more fundamental thing, a more fundamental role of the state. And that is what I'm going to do right now. What we heard first in the first affirmative speech was that the role of the state is to provide well-being and security to the people, that is the basic role of the state. What we say is that this is not the case. What we say is that the basic role of the state is to provide liberties and democracy to the people, and then the people are free to decide what they want to do with them and how they want to go about achieving their well-being and security. Because if we prioritize well-being and security, and if we plan for the well-being and security of the people instead of the people, what we achieve is that people are very well happy by the government plans, but their actual happiness is very much subject to question. So what we say is that lies can cause a bigger harm. Now, firstly, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to point out that harm. Because I'm going to point out that politicians lie at their own discretion endanger this democracy. And then I'm going to go on to review the affirmative case. What we've heard in the cross-questioning is that politicians always want their presence to be good. They want to do good for people at long term. Now, what we've also heard is that they only decide at their own discretion when they are going to lie. So if they think that they are always going to do good for the people, and they are at their own discretion to lie, it logically follows they are going to lie to be good to the people in the long term. In other words, to eliminate other politicians who could be elected instead of them as a result of lying. And we see this on the example of Richard Nixon, ladies and gentlemen. John Lewis Gaddis, in his book, The Cold War, points out that Nixon's motivation in spying on the Democratic Party and the lying about it to the press, the Watergate affair, was actually caused by the fact that he thought that he was defending the United States in the Cold War. He did not want to cause panic by changing a horse in the middle of the race. He wanted to achieve the well-being by having consistent policies, and he thought that eliminating the Democratic Party from the actual elections by having more information would help. But we say that lying actually harms this fundamental thing that we call democracy and pluralist system, and that is a much bigger harm. Now going on to the argumentation, what I would like to point out is that firstly, there is one main assumption of Team Affirmative that their entire case stands upon, and that is the fact that lying by the government is effective. We've heard that in the first speaker's speech many times, that due to honesty of the government, something will happen. And what we say is that that is simply not the case. People do not really abide by what the government tells them for two reasons. Firstly, because few people believe the government. It is a properly discredited organization of our time. According to a Tuesday poll by the Senate organization, only 20% of Czech people actually believe what the Czech government says. And that is a statistic that dwindles with every single lie that is uttered. So as a result of that, even if government says something, people aren't going to really trust it. Secondly, what happened in the last 50 years was that mass media and the government started to inform about the truth. Internet happened, where you can learn about what infectious disease you actually have. WikiLeaks and Pentagon Papers revealed the secret truth that the government had. And think tanks like the fairness and accuracy in reporting fact-check the politicians' statements against the real truth and inform the people about it. So what we say is that people aren't actually going to buy lies by the government. So this refutes both arguments, because without the belief of the people, there's actually not going to be any consequence. Now, in the first argument, we've heard that government is supposed to prevent selfish behavior, with which we take offense because we think that selfish behavior is actually effective. Firstly, we've heard that in the event of fraudulent attacks, which can lead to bankruptcy, governments should apparently lie about something. Now, firstly, we say that lie does not prevent runs on the government, because it is the rating agencies that decrease the rating of banks that actually cause runs on the government. It is the bank's own press statements that say that they need to default on their loans. So if government actually lies in addition to that means that it will detract from their credibility. The rating agencies will decrease the rating of even the government, and therefore the government will even be less able to actually deal with the crisis because they won't be able to make any more money for it. So we've also heard that in the event of SARS, if the government doesn't reveal the nature of the disease, well, others will be less able to be infected. To which we say, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, when the government knows the truth, it is much easier to say the truth to all the people right now, especially to those who control the borders, who can close down the airports, who can say to the people, do not go on the streets, because if you don't tell them that it SARS, they will just go about their business as usual, and they will therefore infect more people. If they don't know that it SARS, that is. Because life won't be affected. If it takes too long, there are other means, and in the age of internet, they are going to learn that they have SARS anyway. So no well-being and security there. In the second argument, we heard that people act emotionally, which is what the case in swine flu, where we need to point out that it was actually the government which panicked, which ordered the anti-disease thing. The WHO panicked by declaring a pandemic. If truth-telling works, there would be no reason to panic, because if the government could tell you that there is actually nothing to be afraid of, which was the case, then there would be no panic. And therefore, lying actually detracted from security and well-being, which, by the way, we don't really see clearly at this time. So, ladies and gentlemen, please tell the truth. It is going to be beneficial to you, your state, and your citizens. Thank you.
Firstly, at the beginning of your speech, you were mostly applying for their liberty, but how the lie broke our liberty.
I've already pointed that out to you. Since politicians think that their own agenda is actually what puts forward the well-being and security of the people who best, they are going to lie in an effort to actually continue their agenda further on, even if it goes against other, let's say, democratic things in society.
Okay. Then next question: if you think that the government made the panic, how do you react on the media who are showing everyone what the swine flu? One day, every day, they show the innocent people who were dying and crying babies.
Did they? Well, obviously, then government line would have no effect. In fact, government went with this.
But don't you think that the media have overreacted and they exaggerated the problem?
Media certainly may overreact. The thing is, the government can do very little about this. Unless they plan to take over the media, in which case we would like to point out the more immediate natures to deliver.
But don't you think that it's better to prevent this exaggeration, which can cause a huge impact?
And how do you want to prevent this? People inform the media. In the age of the internet, people create the media. The main source of information about boost revolutions, epidemics, whatever currently introduced to the global public comes from Twitter.
But why they would not believe to the government if they have the responsibility, if they have the experts and they have most of the information?
Actually, you know what's interesting? People usually don't believe the government even if it's telling the truth. According to a Gallup survey from 20th to 23rd of April, 60% plus of Americans believe that they are still in a recession or a depression, even though the statistics and the government say consistently for the last half a year that is not the case.
But if they don't believe to government, so why the government should do any public conferences and why they should have the role?
Obviously, because the rule of the government needs to be accountable to its citizens. If the government can do any shady practice, can cover anything under the disguise of public well-being, then we have a fundamental problem with controlling our representatives. If our representatives can say lies about whatever they do, then we don't know what they do, and we cannot rely on them based on their parents.
Thank you for your question.
You are welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, sadly, in this side of debate, negatives completely misunderstood what affirmatives meant and what should be the statement that we stand for. We were told that politicians will lie about everything, recklessly about opinions of experts or well-being, just caring for those selfish interests. Now, firstly, we must point out that this goes against the definition of the team of affirmative. We claim that this will be in certain circumstances where there is a threat of spreading of dangerous trends in the society, not anything in selfish interest of the politicians. We were told that the role of state is really never to provide the greatest well-being for the society. It is to provide the greatest liberty. Without being explained what that actually means, how lying prevents the citizens from having valid liberties, where we were told that then citizens are not pretty much deciding for themselves. We believe that negatives made this to an extreme. We were pretty much told that government will lie under any circumstance all the time to prevent citizens from making any decisions at all. Now, we certainly agree that this to a certain extent limits the decision-making that citizens will do. But as we have pointed out, this is the case in the special circumstances, for example, natural disasters, spreading of infectious disease, or panic promoted by even those praised media that negatives talk about. So we believe that in the special circumstances we are talking about, government has this right. We can look at many political theories. For example, Thomas Hobbes, who talks about the state of nature that without governance would arise. And we believe that this state of nature is what actually could happen in case of natural disaster if government doesn't limit the information that is released. There is no effective way to govern the people under this panic. And this state of nature can be compared to state of war, where there is a continuous conflict and brutal competition. This very clearly links to our first argument about the selfish motives of people under certain circumstances. And we although can see that the selfish behavior could be beneficial to an individual, in the term of whole society, it is not beneficial. We were told that lying will not be efficient because people do not believe to the government. Well, obviously not many people go to government sessions and listen to the government. However, it's the government who releases the official information for the media then to present to the people. It is the government who releases the most reliable info that the media can base their information on. And so we believe that in the special cases, this can be helpful to sort of manipulate the behavior of the citizens in order to prevent the greater harm. And I will further explain this on evidence in our arguments. Now, so having dealt with the role of government being the preserving of well-being in certain circumstances, definitely not lying all the time, but this is not the case. And by making this decision, as we also pointed out in the cross-questioning, that experts should be invited, and this is the normal decision-making of the government, that experts are those who give politicians the information and those that decide. We believe that this well-being will be achieved, and it's more important than the certain liberties that we were never actually explained. Now to the actual argumentation. To the first argument about selfish decision-making. We were told about the case of the run on the banks, that the government really doesn't influence that at all. Well, we may happily inform you that this actually happened, for example, in '91 in Japan, where there was a near collapse of a great bank caused by certain difficulties of the bank. However, government was able to manipulate the situation in order to reassure the citizens not to withdraw all their money, even though they were definitely not able to reassure that all the money was in the bank, because it was not. However, this could be prevented, so this case can stand. Secondly, we were told that in spread of infectious disease, it's actually better to tell the people, because for some reasons, then they will not leave the borders of the country and will not spread the disease. Well, we can see no logic in this argumentation. We can see, for example, in 2003 case of SARS in Taiwan, the government actually prevented media from showing the gross pictures of people struggling in bed dying, and also prevented the spread of the pessimistic message, which was in fact real, so that the people could be calmed down, and so the quarantine could be actually imposed, and so that people would not spread the disease. So we actually see that lying in this case works efficiently in Taiwan. We also believe that in other cases, such as natural disasters, where people behave selfishly, such as buying all the resources from the shops, are indeed selfish and not beneficial for the whole society, as some other people will then not be able to access the food reserves. We can see that if government can manipulate the panic, then we believe that the well-being of the greater number of people will be achieved ultimately. So we believe that if government can prevent the selfish behavior by that line, then it has the right and the obligation to do that. Now, secondly, we can see the irrational behavior that can be even more dangerous. Now, we have seen this in cases of swine flu, where indeed citizens were ones who were afraid to leave their houses and buy food in stores. And this would cause the turndown of the Mexican economy by 4.2% in 3 months. And we can see that in government, even though the harm was not really great, people reacted emotionally to it. In fact, 81 people died in Mexico. If government told that only 10 people died, we believe that this would decrease the level of the panic enough to prevent this irrational behavior that then disrupted the functioning of the society. So ultimately, what we have shown you is that it is indeed the role of government to preserve the well-being, that it indeed has some way to do it, and that to prevent selfish or irrational behavior that would disrupt the state, the government should indeed, in circumstances like this, citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Is government the only source of information that current media have?
Well, media, if they want to be reliable, they mostly rely on information given by authorities, which is mostly government, or
Does
some
the
governmental.
internet only channel information from the government?
Well, it's not the official media. Definitely, there is some spread of some information on Facebook, Twitter, ICQ. Also, don't know what uses that anymore. Anyways.
So, wouldn't you say that more people rely on the internet to provide them with information than they rely on newspapers or TV nowadays?
Well, depending on what they rely to, on which information are we talking about. If we are talking about, well, reading about celebrities and their affairs, they would probably more rely on the internet and all the pretty pictures they can see. If talking about economic situation, then we believe that the greater the authority is and the greater number of experts it has, then the more reliable it is, then knowing its assets.
On the topic of economic crisis, have you heard of one back?
Care to elaborate?
Well, he's a media pundit in the United States who consistently claims that the United States is headed for a complete apocalypse, economic apocalypse. And people believe that. How do you explain the fact that he is in direct contradiction with the government message?
Well, definitely we cannot expect all people to believe the same information. We believe in order to, even implement some measures such as quarantine in case of spread of infectious disease, well, government is the one who can firstly say, don't panic, and then secretly impose the quarantine before the people can actually spread the disease all over the place.
That's a nice one, by the way. Are policemen citizens?
Well, mostly. They're civilians, but...
Are policemen afraid that they may contract SARS?
Well, probably everyone is sort of afraid of that, but even doctors that cure the people are afraid, but still...
So would you agree that they are irrational to distinguish them as other citizens?
Well, most of those people who serve in these positions have different attitude in these situations. Like doctors are definitely afraid of contracting the disease, but they still go and treat the people.
But doctors are monitors. They want to help the people. Or policemen are hired to keep the order from the crime.
And that is helping the people by preventing them being robbed by a crazy mob.
Alright, you said that who decides about the dangerous information spreading? You said that governments should lie whenever there is potentially harmful information to be had. What is actually that?
What is the danger sin?
Yeah, and who decides what is potentially harmful?
I mean, what we are mostly talking about is, for example, the epidemic of some disease, or a natural disaster that destroyed part of the country and spread the chaos. And ultimately, it's the politicians who have the final say. But those politicians always consult the experts in their field, what they do in normal order and what they should mostly do in some potentially dangerous situation.
Okay, thank you very much.
The case of affirmative seems more than like the politics of John Hobbes, more like politics of John Locke. And according to this Debata, that all the people will give their power to one entity which will decide about all the aspects of their life. Ladies and gentlemen, what the side affirmative wants is the government who is controlling media and lying to its citizens whenever they think it's necessary. And in my speech, I'm going to continue in what Shimon did in his, and I'm going to show you that the government is allowed to lie to its citizens. They are going to abuse it for their personal benefits, and moreover, that the lying is not effective and doesn't really give people some well-being or the security of the society. So firstly, to the negative argument and to the reaction outside affirmative. The only thing we have heard on the argument that politicians always think that they are doing good for the society, and always think that their policies are the best ones for the long-term benefits of their and well-being of the society. And the only thing we have heard about that was that they will not be allowed to lie in all the time, but they will be allowed only to lie in certain circumstances. But ladies and gentlemen, these certain circumstances, as we have heard in the cross-questioning, are depending on the government, and the government is choosing the special circumstances. And if the government believes that they are doing the best policies, and as for example Richard Nixon in the Watergate affair believed that the Democratic Party would be bad for the well-being of the society during the time of the Cold War. So he was trying to prevent the Democrats from being elected by the people, and therefore he was taking off the liberties of the people to choose which party really should represent them, and he was hanging away the democracy of the state and pluralistic system. So, ladies and gentlemen, these certain circumstances are chosen by the government, and we have no proof that the government will lie only in the circumstances when it could help to the people somehow. And now I'm going to show you that it is not going to help in any case. Firstly, I show you that the lying is not effective, which is the refutation to both the arguments of the affirmative side. We have heard, the only reaction we have heard is that the government releases the official information for media, and that the media inform about what the government says. But ladies and gentlemen, there are much more other sources of information. If we look at the example of Arab revolutions, the main sources of media were the independent people tweeting their messages on the internet. Because if we took the information given by the official media, by Gaddafi's television, we wouldn't really get the ideal and truthful image of what is happening in there. So we can see that people get the truthful information from other sources than the government. Also, there are other things, such like WikiLeaks, which we have heard many times about, and or the whistleblowers, the people in the government who are revealing the truth to the people because they believe that it's right, and and people should know the truth. So we are showing you that the lying is ineffective because people can get the truthful information from other sources, and therefore it is not going to help them to reach some security or well-being. On the other hand, it's going to take away their liberties and democracy. Now to the affirmative arguments. We have heard that really there is a big problem that we should prevent the selfish behavior, but we have shown you that the truth is the best to direct the selfish behavior and to prevent it. We have heard about the run on the banks in Jutland in 1991, and that the government prevented this. But ladies and gentlemen, this is really not the case. Government can prevent the run on the banks only by one method. They can say that they guarantee the money in the banks and that they will pay back to people who would lose their money. And this is not something what you can lie about, because you either have the money to guarantee them or you don't. So therefore the government couldn't lie about this. Moreover, for example, the advisor of the governor of the Czech central bank, Debata, which is not the Debata from the government but different one, said that when the Minister of Finance, Kalousek, lied about, said that the financial crisis is not going to affect Czech Republic, he just decreased the reliability of the government, because all the leaders of the business have seen that the government doesn't have the real information and that the government is lying, and they didn't want to cooperate with the government anymore. So here we can see that the two would be much more helpful to hold this security and well-being of the citizens. Moreover, we have heard that government should prevent media from showing the real image. But we are showing that there are other sources of the information, such as the internet. We have heard that government can stop people from making food reserves and manipulate therefore the planning. But ladies and gentlemen, if we can look at the example of California now, where people don't want to buy the local food because they believe that it is affected by the radioactive activity from Japan, even though the government is still telling them that this is not the case. So we can see that people don't believe the government, and the line is not going to help them anyhow. Lastly, to the second argument, we have heard that economy was affected because people panicked because of the swine flu. But ladies and gentlemen, people weren't the ones who panicked. It was the WHO who panicked and who released the information about pandemics. Government believed that the swine flu is dangerous for their people, and therefore they were not lying. They believed, and therefore Czech government bought so many vaccines against the swine flu because they believe that this is necessary to help the citizens. So it is not lying, and therefore the government was unable to solve this situation with some effective measure. So ladies and gentlemen, please tell the truth.
Talking about liberties and how the government should be honest with people. But don't you think that the government should restrict the information and change the information if it has a great potential of harming the society and actually infringing?
Firstly, I don't believe that government can somehow prevent from being public some information, and in the way that it would help people.
So it cannot restrict the flow of the official information given by the government.
Well, they really can't restrict it. They can say.
Well, they actually can restrict what they release, can't they?
Yeah, they can restrict what they release.
Okay.
Probably, but also there are some independent media, such as the WikiLeaks, who informed about all the lies made by American.
Yeah, how would actually people know that what the government tells is a lie if the government didn't say it?
As I said, we have the independent media.
How would the independent media know?
The independent media, they find out. As, for example, in the Watergate affair, there was someone who told the media that there are some people in the Watergate building, in the offices of the Democratic Party.
Okay, but if there was nobody and the government was consistent in telling that it's not lying, how would the independent media know?
Well, there is always someone who will tell the media. Like in the case of WikiLeaks, there was the people, the whistleblower who informed people.
So you're actually telling that no government in the world is consistent in its statements?
I would say so.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, what is the liberty we strive for?
Well, we would really have the liberty to choose the side, the political party you want to elect, and to choose it on the right information.
Yes. So the main reason and the main liberty is to have the possibility to freely choose your representatives, right?
That's one of them.
Right. And how does the fact that government does something which contributes to your security affect your voting? Wouldn't you appreciate it if the government's done anything which actually is good for you and your security?
Well, I really wouldn't be glad if the government told me that it is impossible to be affected by the SARS disease and then I will get SARS. I will probably.
So you would appreciate if you stayed at home thanks to these statements given by the government.
I would probably stay home if the government say there is the risk of getting SARS on the streets. So please, people, stay home.
Okay, so you're denying that there would be such a thing as pandemic.
Of course, if you have the right information that there is big risk on the streets,
okay, so
you will probably stay
yes,
home.
so people don't act according to emotion. Basically, don't panic, right?
Well, if they have no real reason for it, I don't know why.
Ladies and gentlemen, a man who will not lie to a woman has a very, very little consideration to her feelings. This is a quote of Mark Twain, and that's exactly what we stand here today. That when you are in a crucial situation in front of the woman, the lie is worth it than to limit her freedom of the information what the opposition stands here today. And it will be prosperous, and we will achieve the well-being of the man and of the woman too. So let's see what happened in this debate. Here was a huge clash of the well-being, what is more important, well-being or the freedom or the liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, we are for the liberty too. But we, in a certain circumstances, it's more worth it to lie to achieve the liberty in the future and to have the harm. How said the John Stuart man, the state can justify a limit or control the conduct of individuals when doing so. Doing so prevents them from doing harm to others by violating the rights. That we want to prevent the future harming, and with the line in the special situations when we told you about the diseases, disasters, run on the banks, in all that situation, after the consequences, it's worth it to limit in one situation than to have the consequences. And the side opposition was not able to prove us why the freedom is always better, why in every situation it's worth it, and therefore this main clash of sense. Secondly, here was a main clash of the reality. Who is more, to who we can be, who is reality? That we can trust the government or to the media. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition had used the examples of the WikiLeaks. But why we have to trust the WikiLeaks? Because there was the government had government signs and the officials were there. And today in the morning, when the Obama told that Bin Laden is dead, we trust him because he's the authority. We trust him because in every critical situation, we are looking forward to the authorities to give us the official statement. It can be really nice, and there are a lot of possibilities on the internet when the people are tweeting and writing status on Facebook about the different situations. But always, when you want to look how it really is and to separate some decisions, you look for the state, what they express in the disease when it's some crucial situation, when there is some disaster. And in that case, you find it reliable. Therefore, this opposition point of that the state is still not, we cannot trust in it, it's grounds and we cannot reach it. We can see how the media, what will be worse. And here we see that the lie in this situation will help us in the future. Then I want to express myself to the point of the opposition about politicians. Here we can see the shift in the opposition's argumentation. When they were showing us that they don't know how to decide, and this can be non-effective. Later on, they shift to the point that they can misuse to their own personal advantage. Here we can see that they cannot make their mind and see what they exactly want. So probably it still not stands. And we can see that if there is some personal affair, this is not the crucial situation for the state which can harm the society, and we should get it. So I think that the opposition today, they told us from the beginning that there is always a better alternative to lie if in the situation and we can take it. But they have not showed us any more effective. Why in the situation, why when there is a disaster, that we should not say them that the panic will not start, and we can prepare the situations, and we can prepare we can calm down and control, and we can prevent the future consequences. And therefore, if we lie, it's the best what we can do. And I hope all your women will agree with it. Thank you for listening.
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Because if you lie to a woman, she will find out and bring nothing. So what I'm really doing in my speech is looking at the debate on 4 basic levels. First of all, I'll be discussing the liberties, such the well-being and security of the society. Then I'll be talking about the ineffectiveness of the affirmative case. And then I'll be looking at their 2 arguments. So let's get started with the liberties / well-being and security. Now, as our first speaker has already pointed out to you, what we stand for is the basic liberty to choose your well-being, to choose your security. No reaction to that, by the way. We have shown you that in a representative democracy, you need accountability to the people so that they can decide what they believe is the best for them. Because so-called potentially harmful scenario can be anyone, or it can be anything. Because the government is the one who decides. Because the experts are maybe going to be consulted, as we heard in the first questioning, but there will be no mandatory, say, no control over the government. So we see that the civil liberties of the people may be violated, and that is the fundamental flaw of the affirmative case. Because what we heard from the second speaker of the affirmative was that in Taiwan, the government prevented media from publishing certain images. Now, this is exactly an example of violating the civil liberties. Because we quote, for example, Hannah, media control is a necessary step on the way to dictatorship. So that is where the harm is done, ladies and gentlemen. Now, secondly, let's look at the ineffectiveness of this whole thing. Because the whole case of the affirmative rests on the assumption that people are going to trust the government. Now, first of all, we have pointed out to you that, for example, in the Czech Republic, the government is not being believed by the people. And only 20% of people do believe the government, and this number is currently decreasing even more. Never refuted, by the way. Now, we have pointed out to you in the cross-question that the government is not being believed by the people, even if it is telling the truth. And there we see again the fundamental flaw of the influence. They fail to react on that. Why should the people believe the government if they have other sources of information, such as media? Now, looking at the media, we are told that the government always provides the most reliable information. Now, I really wonder if the information is always the most reliable one, if the government can lie under any circumstances it decides. Second thing I would like to point out is that people, when they have more sources of information, such as internet, it is more likely that the government's lie will leak. Now, again, a scenario never discussed by the affirmatives. Now, we have talked about WikiLeaks, about think tanks, that people actually had ways to access information. Now, the only reaction we heard was in the third speech. So that is why we see that the plan is going to be ineffective and counterproductive at the same time, harming the civil liberties. Looking at the argumentation of the affirmatives itself, now we were told that they want to prevent selfish behavior of the people. Now, our first speaker pointed out to you that the selfish behavior can be effective in certain times. No reaction to that. We were told that what they are achieving, the affirmatives, is either by not lying on their examples or by violating the civil liberties. Because, for example, if the government guarantees for the banks, then it can prevent panics. But if it guarantees something, then it is not lying. So this is the first case. And as far as the preventing of media to publish certain images, that is exactly violating civil liberties I've been talking about earlier. So the first argument definitely falls. As for the irrational behavior, now we are told that in cases of pandemics, it is good to lie to the people. Now, we stand for the opposite because we believe it is better to know the truth. Because then you can have people who can close up the airport, prevent people from going to the streets and spreading the disease. Something that will really elaborated on by the affirmatives. In addition to that, we are pointing out to you that the government itself can panic as well. Another point never really refuted by the affirmatives. So we see that in cases of pandemics, it can be much more effective to tell the people what exactly is going on, what are they supposed to do, and what is the best, not only for them, but also for the community. Again, an analysis that was never reacted to by the affirmatives. So, ladies and gentlemen, what has happened in this debate? Now, we have proven to you not listen to the government. And therefore, the lies are not going to suit them. They are not going to prevent panic. In addition to that, if the government is going to control media and do other things in order to be re-elected because it believes it always does the best for the people, then it harms the liberties of the people. And that is the value we've been proven to you that is much more important than the